Hands of the week. So let's talk about a hand I played on Hustler in a 25-50 game. Interesting hand because it's a cutoff versus button configuration against a rake.
Yeah, with also some different sort of dynamics, not necessarily everyone hunting the fish.
Do you hunt a fish?
I mean, if you were to go shoot a fish with a harpoon, would you have fished it or would you have hunted it?
You have harpooned it.
Right, but do you say, hey, I'm just off for an afternoon of harpooning?
You say Marc Goone used a harpoon.
I'm different. Watch how I handle my business.
Anyway, let's talk about an interesting hand where you open the cutoff with ace-9 of hearts. It's 25-50 with a 50 big blind ante. You go 150. Can you talk a little bit about how you're thinking about like pre-flop sizing and the type of hands you'd be opening from the cutoff in this game?
Yeah, sure. So normally I think like in a stream game, I probably use a bigger sizing just because people are calling too much. They're just V-pipping way too high. But when you have multiple rigs behind you, so I've got Masato on my direct left who's on the button. We've got Suited who's in the small blind. And we've got Sandman, who's actually one of our picks of the top 10 best players on Hustler. He is in the big blind. So we've got reg essentially behind us. So in this configuration, I think we're just going to be getting 3-bet a lot. So I'm probably just going to choose a smaller open size. And I think 3x is kind of like my standard size with the ante on in this game. So we get 3-bet on the button from Masato, who goes 500 here. I played with him a little bit the night before, but only for about 2 hours. So I hadn't seen money showdowns. I don't know much. So I think I'm probably just going to try to play what I think to be like a solid pre-flop strategy against him. One of the minor adjustments that I may make in this particular spot is when I 4-bet here, especially because we are 550, 600 big blinds deep here, which is ridiculously deep. When I start 4-betting, I think I want to choose like just good hands, better hands, best hand.
Papa John's.
In this particular configuration, because I think when people 3-bet on stream, even regs, like they just don't want to fold in position. And so I think like I just don't really have any fold equity here. So I don't really want to have like 4-bet bluffs per se. If you were going to construct a 4-bet range here, could you kind of just break down quickly like what that range would look like?
Yeah, I think hands that fall really nicely into it that I think a lot of people maybe wouldn't instinctively jump in with would be hands like King Queen suited, Ace Queen suited, Ace Jack suited. What people might consider not that strong, like King Jack suited, that's still dominating hands like Queen Jack suited, Jack 10 suited, stuff that he's going to be forced to continue to our 4-bet with, and that's going to flop well for us. They're just going to play easier out of position post flop.
And when you're playing in a situation where somebody's going to just be continuing way too wide, to 4-bet a hand like King 6 suited or like Ace 4 suited here doesn't really make a lot of sense if he's just going to be continuing with all the King X and all the Ace X hands that dominate you. So I elect to call. And we go to a flop, 9-4-4 rainbow, and I check and flow over to him, and he is going to put out a pretty standard 1/3 pot size c-bet here, and now the action is back to me. A couple of things I'm thinking. Number one, he's going to be 3-betting wide pre-flop. It's button versus cutoff. He doesn't have an incentive to flat because there's 2 regs in the blind, so he's probably going to be playing 3-bet or fold. So he's going to be 3-betting a lot of hands. On this particular flop, he's probably going to be range c-betting. And so I think we can attack this c-bet quite a bit. And I think one of the mistakes that at least I used to make was in this spot. I'm like, oh, they're c-betting a lot, so I'm just going to check raise all my air a ton, and then I'm only going to check raise like thick value. Where I think where you can really kind of punish people in this spot, punish. If they're c-betting like pocket 8s or pocket 7s, or they're c-betting like 10 jack of diamonds, like 2 overs, backdoor flush draw, backdoor straight draw, hands are going to continue with. Like just go linear too as well. Like sure, you can check raise some of the air like 3 to a backdoor straight and flush, but like you can really put them in a pretty precarious situation by like check raising pocket 10s here, check raising 9x, and just kind of forcing them to continue. And people aren't used to being check raised linearly in these type of spots.
One of the fears I see from a lot of our like newer horses is going, well, if I check raise here and he puts in a 3-bet, I'm not going to know what to do. So instead of reacting to what's actually happened, they sort of begin to react to something that hasn't yet happened. But let's face it, how many flop 3-bets are you actually expecting to see here? And if you do see one, well, that's the time to really start thinking about it.
Recognizing that in a wide versus wide configuration, like putting in more check raises as a response to people who are probably c-betting too much and probably have a wide range is a pretty good adjustment.
Yeah, I think so. And in some configurations, it doesn't feel that strong to have top pair with top kicker, but cutoff versus button against an aggressive player, this is a pretty strong hand.
So he bets 400 here, and I decided to raise to 1200.
Yeah.
So a small check raise here, and he thinks about it, and he is actually, after some deliberation, going to put in a bet, 3-bet here to 3,600.
I think the obvious question is, what do you think the range that he bet 3 bets looks like in this situation, and how do you think ace-9 suited stacks up against that range?
Well, I think it's going to be 4x and maybe a bunch of air.
Right.
With a hand like aces or kings here, the question is, does he 3-bet those hands? And my answer is probably not.
Right. Well, let's continue that logical chain, right? If people over c-bet, people have too polar a check-raising range, then having a linear, which is to say thin 3 bets on the flop, doesn't make a lot of sense. So what you tend to see from breaks when they are 3-betting flops is that they have the nuts or air. And this is a spot where we talk about how many combos of the nuts are there. Well, not that many. How many hands are there that could be 2 overs with a backdoor, an ace high, a king high hand?
So we elect to call in this situation, and we go to a turn. Just a 10 of hearts gives us the backdoor ace high flush draw. If he did continue to fire big on this card, we just have an easy call.
Right.
But he actually checks it back here, which in my estimation is just going to be waving the white flag quite a bit here on the turn.
Could you talk a little bit about why you think he's waving the white flag?
Yeah, because I think after he bet 3-bets the flop, like we talked about, he either has 4x or air. He just doesn't have a lot of like kings, queens, jacks, like hands like that here. So like those are the type of hands that may like check back turn and then go for a value bet on the river. If he doesn't have those kind of like mergy hands, and I think most of the 4x or almost all of the 4x just continues betting the turn, attempting to get value. So I think when he checks back the turn, it's just the air kind of waving the white flag. And you may think, well, why would he wave the white flag here? Well, because he already thought when we check raise this flop that we have 4x or air.
Right.
So when we raise the flop and then call the bet 3-bet, what does our hand look like to him?
Looks like 4x.
Yeah,
right.
It looks like we have trips. So for him, that looks like a horrible range to bluff into. In a vacuum, like him kind of giving up and checking back this turn, I think is a pretty solid play.
Right, because we might check raise some air on this flop, but you don't bluff call. We don't check raise the flop
and then float
on the flop after he bet 3-bets us. So we have something.
We go to a river. River is the innocuous 3 of diamonds. Pot is 8,300, and I make what I consider to be maybe my most questionable decision in this hand. I like how I played pre-flop. I like how I played the flop. Turn, obviously standard. But river, I think this is a little bit maybe fancy pants syndrome. My thoughts were here on the river. If he's checking back turn, he's just waving the white flag. He has nothing anyway. By me checking the river, he's very unlikely to bluff if he gave up on the turn. I think he's just kind of done with this, like figuring that we are setting the trap. So I decided to block here because I kind of lost that kind of logical thread that we talk about. And the logical thread is, well, he either has 4x or nothing. And I thought, well, you know, if I block here and he does happen to have a hand like aces or kings or queens, he's probably going to put in a small raise for value, and then I can bet 3-bet and get him to fold all that. And also, if I block, I think maybe there's some chance he just spaz raises. We're just going to win this hand all the time by bet 3-betting on this river, and that was kind of the plan. And I think I kind of lost the logical consistency of, hey, wait a second, he doesn't actually have overpairs here. So getting to this river, his range is going to look like purely air. And I think air is, although still unlikely, it's more likely to bluff if we check than if we block.
And I think some of his airball bluffs on the flop might have had a 10 in them, right? So when we block this river, I don't think he's raising 10x. I think we just bet 2,400, get called, and get shown queen 10 of clubs. If we check, well, maybe we give the opportunity to queen jack of clubs to fire a bluff here.
So I think the river was a little bit of a blunder. I'm not sure if he would have taken the bait, but either way, I prefer the check to the block.
And what it shows is that when the action is somewhat unique, like a bet, 3-bet on the flop, it makes giving someone rope on later streets just a little bit more difficult, right? Because a thinking player goes, wait, he check raised me on the flop and then called a 3-bet? What air does he really have on 9-4-4? And selling that story of, no, I'm checking this river to check fold, I think that's a somewhat tough sell, but I'm betting this river small with air, please hero call me, or spaz raise might be an even harder story
They're
to sell.
both a tough sell.
They're a tough sell, yeah. The best time to get paid when we bet thin is when we have a lot of perceived bluff. And the best time to bluff is when we have very few perceived bluffs.
And unfortunately, in this spot, we have very few perceived bluffs. So going for value here, it's just hard to get paid.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I end up betting 2,400. He folds, and he actually had Jack 7 of hearts here. So he picked up kind of like the gin card on the turn, and he still checked back, just figuring, oh shit, I'm up against a 4. Let's just check back and try to realize.
Probably didn't want to face the second part of the turkey bet, which would be the triple check raise.
That's my word.
I really like it. Yeah. I'm not a bowler, because I think that's where it comes from, right?
Yeah. So turkey in bowling is when you get 3 strikes in a row.
Yeah, it's never happened to me.
You've never
Not a good bowler.
Not a good bowler?
No.
You sometimes throw it like in the neighbor's lane.
I've never thrown it in the neighbor's lane, but I'm not ashamed to say that if we can get those are they called rails? The little bumpers?
No, they're gumptuous.
I've only had a couple of turkey bets in my life, and I think him checking back Jack 7 of hearts on this turn is him not wanting to face another check raise, and if he ends up on the river with a hand like Jack 7 of hearts, he might feel compelled to not show down Jack high, and we might be able to snap off a bluff by checking it over to him.
He folds here, and I think he actually looks at the camera and says, you punished me. Punish.
A little bit of a backstory on that one, I assume.
Yeah, so we played the night before, and I kept telling him, you just keep punishing me. Punish. No more punish, please. Punish.
These two played together late Monday night after the stream. I was playing with them.
See, there he goes. He goes, you punished me.
You punished me.
Punish. Punish. All right, everybody have a gentle day.